You keep calling it tired. I call it practiced surrender. I've watched you drag the same excuses across the same floor until they leave grooves in your life, and you step into them like their destiny. You don't even notice anymore. You wake up and you reach for comfort the way a drowning man reaches for air. Except you're not drowning. You're just avoiding the cold shock of effort. You tell yourself you're overwhelmed, that you're burnt out, that you're waiting for the right moment, the right mood, the right sign. I've counted those moments. I've watched you waste them with the precision of a man who swears he's unlucky, while he chooses the same soft option every day. You've become skilled at explaining yourself. You can talk for hours about what you'll do, what you could do, what you used to do, what you almost did. You can build plans that feel like progress, and you can stare at them like they're proof you're changing. But nothing moves. You stay the same. You keep your body where it is, your mind where it is, your habits where they are. You don't need more time. You need to stop lying about what you do with it. No one checks on the strong. That's not a tragedy. That's the deal. Strength has a price, and part of that price is silence. When you show people you can carry weight, they stop looking for the strain in your face. When you keep showing up, when you keep functioning, when you keep being the one who handles it, they assume you always will. They don't see the nights you grind your teeth in the dark. They don't feel the heaviness in your chest when the room gets quiet. They see what you've trained them to see: stability, capability, control. And because they see that, they don't ask. They don't offer. They don't slow down for you. They move on, and they let you keep holding the world like it's normal. You can hate that, but it won't change. You can resent them, but it won't make you lighter. The world isn't built to protect the man who looks like he can take it. It's built to use him. If you want to be strong, accept that. If you can't accept it, stop pretending you're strong. Because the real weakness isn't needing help. The real weakness is believing someone owes it to you. You want to be understood. You want someone to notice the effort, the pressure, the fatigue behind your eyes. You want a witness. You want a hand on your shoulder that says you've done enough. But you don't get to live off what you want. Most men don't get a witness. Most men suffer without an audience. That's why so many of them rot quietly. They don't collapse in public. They don't scream. They just shrink. They trade the sharp edge of their potential for a dull life that doesn't demand anything. They call it peace. It's not peace. It's sedation. It's comfort dressed up as maturity. It's fear wearing a clean shirt. And it grows on you because it doesn't hurt at first. It feels like relief. It feels like you're finally being reasonable. But what you're really doing is cutting your own legs off because running started to burn. You don't notice you've crippled yourself until years pass, and you can't stand the sight of what you've become. Nobody is coming to save you. Not because you're unworthy, not because you're cursed, not because the universe has a personal vendetta against you. because that's just how it is. The world is full of people fighting their own fights, and even the ones who love you have limits. They will support you until it inconveniences them, until it scares them, until it requires consistency from them. Then they'll disappear, quietly, with explanations that sound fair. They'll tell you they're busy. They'll tell you they're tired. They'll tell you they're dealing with their own things. And they will be telling the truth, their truth. Meanwhile, you'll still be stuck inside your own head. You will still be the one waking up with your life in your hands. You will still be the one who has to decide whether today is another day you disappear a little, or a day you take yourself back. That's the brutal part. You can have people around you and still be alone in the decisions that matter. The moment you understand that, you stop waiting. You stop bargaining with your future. You stop acting like your life is a group project. It's not. It's your name on the consequences. Motivation is a liar. It shows up dressed like power, and it leaves like smoke. It's a mood, and moods are weak. You've learned to depend on it because it makes you feel alive without making you change. Motivation lets you imagine a new life while you sit still. It gives you a rush, and then it takes payment. You crash, you scroll, you snack, you sleep, you procrastinate. Then you call it losing motivation, like it was something that happened to you, like you were attacked. You weren't attacked, you were exposed. The day you rely on motivation is the day you admit you don't have discipline. Discipline is identity. Discipline is what you do when you don't feel like it. Discipline is what stays when your mind is loud, and your heart is heavy, and your body wants out. If you only move when you feel good, you don't have a system. You have a fantasy. And fantasies die fast in the real world, because reality doesn't care what you feel. You think your problem is exhaustion. Sometimes it is. Most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's avoidance wearing the mask of fatigue. Real exhaustion has a clean smell to it. Real exhaustion comes from hours of honest work, from weight lifted, miles walked, tasks finished, decisions made. Real exhaustion earns sleep. What you have is the tiredness of a mind that runs in circles, the fatigue of a man who carries stress but won't carry responsibility. That kind of tired doesn't get healed by rest. It gets healed by action. Your body knows the difference. Your body knows when you've done something. That's why you can lie in bed all day and still feel drained. Because you didn't spend energy on progress. You spent it on resisting progress. That resistance is expensive. It eats you from the inside. It makes you feel like life is heavy when you haven't even lifted it. You've made a habit of calling fear patience. You say you're waiting for clarity, waiting for confidence, waiting for the perfect path. You're waiting for your hands to stop shaking before you pick up the weight. That's not patience. That's cowardice with manners. Clarity comes after movement, not before it. Confidence comes from proof, not from thinking. You want to feel ready because feeling ready gives you permission. You don't need permission. You need to decide. There's a difference between a man who waits and a man who prepares. Waiting is passive. Preparing is violent in its honesty. Preparing means doing the boring work when no one cares, when there's no applause, when your doubts are louder than your goals. Preparing means you stop asking if it will work, and you start building the version of you that can make it work. The world rewards what exists. It doesn't reward what you intended. Excuses are plans in disguise. You've built a whole life around soon. Soon I'll start. Soon I'll get serious. Soon I'll clean it up. Soon I'll stop wasting time. Soon I'll become the man I keep talking about. Soon is where weak men live. Soon is safe. Soon has no deadlines. Soon doesn't require you to face yourself today. But soon always becomes never, because time doesn't negotiate. Time doesn't care about your intentions. Time only records your actions, and it charges interest on delay. Every day you postpone, you're not staying the same. You're training yourself to quit. You're building the identity of a man who doesn't follow through. And identity is heavy. Identity becomes reflex. One day you'll wake up and realize you don't even believe your own words anymore. That's the deadliest moment. Not when you fail, when you stop expecting yourself to succeed. Comfort is decay. It doesn't look like decay at first. It looks like a warm room. It looks like a quiet night. It looks like I deserve a break. It looks like I'll do it tomorrow. It looks like I've been through enough. Comfort is subtle. It doesn't kick the door down. It whispers. It offers you a small deal. Take it easy today, and I'll make you feel better. You take the deal, and tomorrow it offers it again. Then it offers it every day, and you think you're choosing. You're not choosing. You're addicted. Comfort turns you into a man who avoids discomfort at all costs, and that means you avoid growth. Because growth is discomfort with purpose. Comfort makes you emotionally fragile. The smallest push feels like an attack. The smallest challenge feels like unfairness. You start defending your softness like it's your right. And the world doesn't respect a man who defends softness. The world takes advantage of him because it can. You're not stagnant because life is unfair. Life is unfair, yes, but that's not the reason. You're stagnant because you keep making the same decisions with different excuses. You keep returning to the same habits because they're familiar, because they numb you, because they don't demand anything. You want change without friction. You want improvement without pain. You want results without a season of being embarrassed by how far behind you are. That season is required. If you won't endure it, you won't cross the gap. You can't skip the part where you look weak. You can't skip the part where you get humbled. You can't skip the part where you are tired and you do it anyway. That is the forging. That is where the fake parts of you burn off. Men are forged alone, not isolated from everyone, not hated by the world, not living like some dramatic exile. Alone in the only way that matters, alone in choice, alone in accountability, alone in the moment when you could quit and no one would know. That's where most men die. Not from bullets, not from sickness, from private surrender, from the quiet moment when they decide again to let themselves down. That's why suffering without witnesses is the rule, because the hardest battles are the ones you can hide. The hardest battles are the ones you can pretend don't exist. You can smile and show up and be polite and still be losing your life inside. You can be praised for being strong while you're actually just numbing yourself. And no one will interrupt you. No one will pull you out. No one will drag you to discipline. That's your job. That's your burden. If you can't carry it, you'll be carried by the current, like every other man who wanted comfort more than pride. You keep thinking someone is going to notice your struggle and reward you for enduring it. That's not how it works. Endurance is the baseline. Everyone endures something. The difference is what they do while enduring. Pain doesn't make you special. Pain is common. Pain is cheap. Pain is everywhere. What matters is what you build from it. Pain is a teacher, but only if you stop treating it like an enemy. If you keep trying to escape pain, you stay small. If you learn to use it, it sharpens you. Pain shows you where you're weak. Pain shows you what you avoid. Pain shows you what you refuse to face. You don't need to romanticize it. You don't need to worship it. You need to listen to what it reveals. Every time you feel that discomfort in your chest when you think about doing the hard thing, that's a map. It's pointing directly to the work. Your instincts aren't broken. They're just drowned in noise. The noise is part of your problem. You keep your life loud because silence would force you to hear yourself. You fill every gap with input, every spare moment with screens, every uncomfortable thought with distraction. You tell yourself it's normal, that everyone does it. Everyone does, and everyone is getting weaker because of it. A man who cannot sit with his own mind becomes a man who can be controlled. If you can't handle a quiet room, you can't handle discipline. If you can't handle boredom, you can't handle long-term goals. You've trained yourself to need stimulation before you act. That's why your focus collapses after 10 minutes. That's why you can't finish what you start. That's why your mind feels scattered. It's not a personality, it's training. And if it's training, it can be retrained. But not with motivation, with rules, with structure, with removing options. Options are killing you. Every day you keep too many doors open, so you never have to commit to one. You keep backup plans, so you never have to face the full cost of your choice. You keep your old habits, just in case, your old friends, just in case, your old environment, just in case, your old identity, just in case. And the part of you that needs to change can't breathe because you won't close anything. You want transformation while keeping every comfort that made you stagnant. That doesn't happen. You don't rebuild a house while refusing to tear down the rotten beams. You don't become disciplined while keeping a lifestyle built for indulgence. You don't become sharp while protecting the dull parts of your day. You have to cut. You have to remove. You have to narrow your life until the only path left is forward. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. You say you don't have energy. Energy isn't found. It's created. You create it by moving, by eating like a man who respects tomorrow, by sleeping like a man who has work to do, by lifting your body out of comfort and letting it remember what it's built for. Your body is not just a vehicle, it's a signal. Every time you choose softness, your body sends the message to your brain that you're a man who avoids. Every time you choose effort, your body sends the message that you're a man who handles. Your confidence isn't in your thoughts, it's in your actions. That's why you can't think your way out of this. You have to move your way out. The mind follows the body more than you want to admit. A man who trains hard, eats clean, and keeps his word becomes dangerous to his own excuses. His excuses start sounding childish. His old habits start looking pathetic. Not because he got enlightened, because his standard rose and the lies couldn't reach it anymore. You're afraid of being judged. That fear has been steering you for years, and you pretend it's being private or keeping to yourself. You don't want people to see you start because starting looks messy. Starting looks weak. Starting looks like failure waiting to happen. So you stay in planning mode, in hiding mode, in I'm figuring it out mode. It lets you feel superior without being tested. It lets you protect your ego. But your ego is the cage. You're protecting the very thing that's keeping you trapped. A man who wants results can't worship pride. Pride makes you fragile. Pride makes you avoid feedback. Pride makes you refuse to be a beginner. Pride makes you quit early so you can say, I could have done it if I really tried. That line is poison. It keeps you safe from the truth. The truth is simple. If you could have done it, you would have. If you didn't, then you can't yet. And yet is earned, not granted. The world doesn't care what you deserve. It cares what you can prove. Effort is the only proof of worth. Not your story, not your potential, not your suffering, not your intentions. Proof. Show me the work. Show me the results. Show me the consistency. Show me what you do when the day is ugly and the mood is dead. That's what you are. Everything else is decoration. You can decorate your life with talk, with quotes, with plans, with identity labels, with excuses that sound intelligent. But the world reads your calendar, your habits, your body, your bank account, your skill level, your relationships, your discipline. It reads what you do, not what you say. And you know this. That's why you get irritated when someone calls you out. Not because they're wrong, but because they touch the part of you that already knows. You want to be rescued from your own stagnation. You want a clean turning point. A single night where you realize something and wake up different. That's a fantasy. Real change is smaller and colder. Real change is choosing the hard thing without feeling heroic. It's doing the work and feeling nothing, then doing it again. It's cleaning your life up like it's maintenance, not drama. It's showing up when there's no surge of emotion to carry you. It's building a standard and obeying it like a law. A law doesn't care if you're inspired. A law doesn't care if you're sad. A law doesn't care if you're tired. A law is a boundary. Discipline has to become that. Not a vibe, not a phase, not a temporary push. An identity with consequences when you break it. Consequences are the only language some men understand. And if you're honest, you're one of them. You've had enough soft warnings, enough gentle advice, enough pep talks. They don't work because they still leave you room to negotiate. You keep negotiating with your future like it's a friendly conversation. It's not. Your future is a judge that never sleeps. Every choice you make writes a sentence into the person you will become. You don't get to argue with that person later. You will meet him in your mirror, in your health, in your finances, in your loneliness, in your regrets. You can't hide from the man you build. And if you keep building a man who quits, who delays, who avoids, who numbs, who blames circumstances, then one day you'll look up and realize you've become the exact kind of man you used to feel disgusted by. Not evil, just soft, just powerless, just irrelevant. And the worst part is you'll know it was your hands that made him. You keep telling yourself you're different, that your situation is unique, that your pain is heavier, that your obstacles are more complicated. Maybe some men do carry heavier loads, but the world doesn't hand out mercy for complexity. It hands out outcomes. That's why the strongest men don't talk about how hard it is. Not because it isn't hard, but because talking about it doesn't make it lighter. They accept the load, and they adjust their behavior. They cut distractions. They prioritize sleep. They train their bodies. They learn skills. They keep moving. They don't whine. They don't romanticize. They don't ask to be understood. They understand that their life is theirs, and if they don't handle it, it will handle them. That's the difference. Not talent, not luck. Ownership. You're tired of being strong because strength has been your mask. You've used strength as a way to avoid vulnerability, and now you feel isolated. You don't tell anyone when you're slipping, so no one knows. Then you get bitter that they don't know. That bitterness is another lie. You built the silence, and now you're blaming the room for being quiet. If you want support, ask. But don't confuse support with rescue. Support is someone handing you water while you walk. Rescue is someone carrying you because you refuse to move. No one respects a man who wants rescue. They might pity him. They might comfort him. But respect comes from movement. Respect comes from seeing you bleed without begging. From seeing you fall and stand back up without theatrics. From seeing you do the work even when no one claps. The man who can ask for help and still carry his weight is rare. Most men either beg or pretend they're fine until they break. You've been pretending, and the cost of pretending is that you don't build real connection. You build an image, then you live behind it and wonder why you feel unseen. You don't need to be seen. You need to be disciplined. Being seen won't fix you. Being understood won't fix you. Being loved won't fix you. You can be loved and still be weak. You can be loved and still waste your life. Love is not a replacement for standards. Love is not a replacement for structure. Love can't do your work for you. There are men who are loved deeply and still die full of regret because they never built themselves into something solid. They were comforted instead of forged. They were protected from discomfort instead of trained to survive it. You don't want that life. You want to be the kind of man whose presence calms people because he's reliable. Not because he talks, because he does what he says. Because his habits don't collapse the moment the wind changes. Reliability is earned through suffering. Quiet suffering. Daily suffering. The kind nobody sees. The kind that doesn't get medals. You say you want peace. Peace is not a soft couch. Peace is not endless rest. Peace is a byproduct of being capable. Peace is what you feel when your body is strong, your mind is clear, your finances are handled, your skills are sharp, and your word means something. Peace comes after work, not before it. The peace you've been chasing is escape. It's numbness. It's the fake peace of a man who refuses to face his own potential because potential is heavy. Real peace comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes. That's why disciplined men sleep better. Not because life is easier for them, but because they trust themselves. You don't trust yourself. That's the truth you avoid. You don't trust yourself to do what you say. You don't trust yourself to endure discomfort. You don't trust yourself to stay consistent. That's why your mind is loud. That's why your stress never leaves. You're living with a man you can't rely on, and that man is you. So here's what happens next, whether you like it or not. You either keep doing what you've been doing, and you become smaller, quieter, more bitter, more tired, more numb. Until one day you stop even pretending you're trying. Or you decide that your feelings no longer get a vote. You decide that your life will not be governed by mood. You decide that discipline is not a tool you pick up when convenient, but a law you live under. You strip your day down. You remove the things that steal your focus. You stop bargaining. You stop waiting for rescue. You stop looking for someone to validate your struggle. You get up and you do the work. Not because you're inspired, because the alternative is watching your own life slip through your hands while you make excuses that sound reasonable right up until the day you realize they didn't save you from anything. They just kept you comfortable while you disappeared. You want to know why nobody checks on you. Because you've survived everything so far, and survival makes people lazy about your pain. They assume you'll survive this too, and you probably will. That's not the point. The point is what kind of man survives it. A man who endures and grows, or a man who endures and decays. Both are common. One is respected. One is forgotten. The forgotten man doesn't get a dramatic ending. He doesn't crash with fireworks. He just fades. He becomes background. He becomes the guy who used to talk big, the guy who had potential, The guy who could have been something. And no one says it out loud, but everyone sees it. You will see it most of all. You will feel it in the quiet moments when no one is watching and you can't hide from the truth of your own choices. Results, silence, doubt. Not because results make you arrogant, but because results make your mind obey. Your mind doubts because you haven't given it evidence. Your mind questions because you keep failing your own promises. Your mind stays anxious because it knows you're not disciplined. Give it proof. Keep a promise to yourself today, then do it again tomorrow. Build a chain so long that your excuses can't cut it. Let your body change. Let your skills sharpen. Let your work pile up. Let your progress become undeniable. That's when the noise in your head gets quiet. Not when you find the perfect quote. Not when someone finally understands you. When you become a man who acts. You're going to suffer either way. That's what you keep forgetting. You're already suffering. You suffer when you avoid. You suffer when you procrastinate. You suffer when you lie to yourself. You suffer when you watch your life stay the same. You suffer when you scroll and feel empty. You suffer when you wake up tired with no reason. You suffer when you look at your body and know you neglected it. You suffer when you look at your bank account and know you wasted time. You suffer when you think about your goals and feel the distance. That suffering is weak suffering. It produces nothing. It's just pain that rots. There is another kind of suffering, the kind that builds, the kind that leaves marks you can respect, the kind that creates strength, skill, and self-trust. Choose your suffering. Either way, it's coming. One makes you solid. One makes you hollow. If you want to keep being the man everyone thinks is strong, stop performing strength and start living it. Real strength is quiet. Real strength is boring. Real strength is waking up and doing what needs to be done without an audience. It's setting standards and following them when you're alone. It's not asking to be applauded for doing what you promised yourself you'd do. It's not needing someone to check on you because you check on yourself with brutality and honesty. You hold yourself accountable before life has to. You don't wait until you're forced. You don't wait until the consequences are so heavy you can't breathe. You move now while you still have room, while you still have time, while your body still responds, while your mind can still be trained, while your name still means something in your own head. You're not lost. You're undisciplined. Lost is when there is no path. There is a path. It's just hard, and you keep looking away from it. The path is the work you avoid. The path is the conversation you don't want to have. The path is the routine you don't want to follow. The path is the early mornings, the clean food, the training, the reading, the building, the repetition, the patience, the humility. The path is doing it without certainty, doing it without validation, doing it without comfort. The path is you deciding that your life will not be a museum of intentions. It will be a record of actions. And if that sounds heavy, good. It is heavy. That weight is what you've been running from. That weight is what will make you a man you can respect. So sit in the dark if you want. Sit with the heaviness. Sit with the truth that no one is coming, that no one will carry you, that no one will do the work for you, that your excuses have been costing you years. Let it settle. Let it stop being an idea and start being a verdict. Then stand up and do something that proves you're still alive inside. Not dramatic, not heroic. Simple, clean, hard. One task done properly, one promise kept, 1 hour used with intent, then another and another. Build the man you keep talking about until talking is unnecessary. Because when you are truly disciplined, when your life starts to show it, you won't need anyone to check on you. You won't be waiting for a hand on your shoulder. You'll be too busy becoming a threat to the version of you that wanted comfort more than respect. And you're going to test that claim the first time your routine hits resistance, because you've said words like that before. You've promised yourself you'd change. You felt the heat for a night. You've stared into the mirror and made vows. And then the next morning arrived like it always does, plain and indifferent, and you went back to what you know. Not because you forgot what you wanted, but because you were never trained to obey yourself. That's the real issue. Your life isn't falling apart because you lack information. You know what needs to be done. You've known for a long time. Your problem is that you treat your own standards like suggestions. You let your feelings negotiate your actions. You let inconvenience rewrite your plans. You let boredom break your focus. That isn't a lack of intelligence. That's a lack of authority. You are not the leader of your own life. You are a crowd. Different impulses grabbing the wheel every hour, swerving toward whatever feels easiest, then calling it circumstances when you crash. A man who cannot command himself will always be commanded by something else. By hunger, by comfort, by attention, by fear, by the opinions of people who don't live in his skin. You can call it stress if it makes you feel less responsible. It's still weakness. Quiet weakness, polite weakness, weakness that looks functional from the outside. But it's weakness because you keep choosing what costs you least today and punishes you most later. You think discipline is a personality trait. It's not. It's a system and a refusal. It's a set of rules you stop arguing with. The reason you keep failing is because you keep leaving loopholes. You leave yourself ways out. You keep the option to quit tucked under your tongue like a secret, and your mind knows it's there, so it never fully commits. You don't need to become a different species. You need to close the exits. You need to make it harder to be weak than to be disciplined. And that starts with a decision you don't revisit. Not a mood, not a motivation spike. A decision that becomes the backbone of your day. You decide what kind of man you are going to be, and then you build a day that forces you to live like him. You remove the things that make you soft. You cut the habits that numb you. You stop pretending they're harmless. They aren't harmless. They are training. Every time you choose the easy hit of distraction, you are training your mind to need relief instead of results. Every time you choose the extra hour in bed, you are training yourself to delay discomfort. Every time you start tomorrow, you are training yourself to be a man who escapes pressure with promises. Then you act surprised that pressure crushes you. You've been rehearsing being crushed. When you're always strong, people don't check on you, and part of you wants to hate them for it. But the truth is uglier. You like being the one who holds it together, because it gives you identity without forcing you to evolve. Strong becomes your costume. It becomes the excuse you wear to avoid rebuilding your life. You can hide behind responsibility. You can hide behind being needed. You can hide behind being the dependable one. And while you're hiding, your own goals stay untouched. Your own body stays neglected. Your own mind stays foggy. You tell yourself you're sacrificing. Sometimes you are. A lot of the time you're just avoiding the risk of focusing on yourself and failing in a way you can't blame on anyone else. It's safer to be the strong one carrying others than to be the man who puts his own life on the line and finds out he's not as capable as he pretends. That's why you stay busy. Busy is a drug. Busy lets you feel important while you stay stagnant. Busy is motion without direction. Busy is noise. Busy is a way to die without anyone calling it death. If you want to be strong in a way that actually matters, you're going to have to accept that nobody will clap for the changes that save you. The work that builds you is invisible at first. It happens when the house is quiet, when your phone is face down, when the world is asleep, when the day doesn't care what you feel. It happens in repetition. The same basic decisions done correctly over and over until they become your nature. That is what men are made of. Not big speeches, not dramatic turning points. Repetition under pressure. You do it, and you do it again, and you do it when you don't want to, and you do it when you feel nothing, and you do it when you feel worse than nothing. You do it until your excuses start sounding embarrassing in your own head. Most men never get there because they don't want to be bored. They don't want to be lonely. They don't want to be uncomfortable for long enough to grow. They want transformation to feel like a highlight reel. Real transformation feels like routine. It feels like waking up and handling business without fanfare. It feels like being unimpressed with yourself. It feels like being strict and calm. The man you want to become will not be born from emotion. He will be built from rules. You're also going to have to face the fact that you've been using "I'm not okay" as a shield. Not because you're lying about pain, but because you've learned that pain can excuse a lack of action. You wear it like armor. You show it to yourself to justify why you didn't show up. You tell yourself you're struggling so you can stop trying without calling it quitting. Listen carefully. Pain is real. Some nights are heavy. Some mornings feel like concrete. I've watched men carry grief that hollowed them out and still get up to do what needed doing because the world doesn't stop just because their chest hurts. You don't get to use pain to avoid responsibility forever. At some point, pain becomes the reason you need discipline more, not less. Discipline is what keeps your life from collapsing when your emotions are unstable. Discipline is what gives you structure when your mind is ugly. Discipline is what keeps your body from decaying when your spirit feels tired. Discipline is what stops you from turning a bad season into a ruined life. You think your emotions are commands. They aren't. They're weather. They change. They pass. They rise and fall. And you've been letting the storm decide whether you move. That's a child's way to live. A man respects his emotions, but he doesn't obey them like a servant. He observes them, names them, and then he does what needs to be done anyway. You don't need to feel like it to do it. You need to do it so you can survive the day with your integrity intact. There will be days you feel empty. There will be days you feel angry. There will be days you feel tired. There will be days you feel like you're losing. Those days are not special. They are normal. Your life doesn't get paused because you're having a hard day. If you let every hard day change your standards, you will never have standards. You'll have moods. And moods build nothing. The lie you keep telling yourself is that you need to heal first, then act. No, you act to heal. You move to heal. You train your body to heal. You clean up your environment to heal. You keep small promises to heal. Healing isn't a couch. Healing is a process of rebuilding trust with yourself. You can't meditate your way out of a life you ruined through repeated weak choices. You can't think yourself into discipline. You can't talk yourself into integrity. You earn those things through behavior that matches your words. That's why the man who is depressed and still trains is stronger than the man who feels good and still avoids work. Strength isn't the absence of pain. Strength is function under pain. Quiet function, cold function. You don't get to wait for your inner world to become perfect. It never will. You have to build a life that operates even when your inner world is messy. You've been begging for motivation because you don't want to admit you're afraid. Motivation is your excuse to avoid the first ugly steps, because the first ugly steps are where the truth lives. The first time you commit to a routine, you'll realize how weak your attention span is. The first time you try to eat clean, you'll realize how addicted you are to comfort. The first time you try to work deeply, you'll realize how often you run from silence. The first time you try to train consistently, you'll realize how quickly you quit when it burns. That realization is humiliating, and humiliation is what you've been protecting yourself from. But humiliation is the doorway. Humiliation is the price of entry. You don't get to skip it. The man who becomes dangerous paid that price and kept paying it until it stopped feeling like humiliation and started feeling like training. He got used to being bad at something. He got used to looking foolish. He got used to failing in public and still returning. That's why he wins. Not because he never felt embarrassment, but because embarrassment didn't control him. You want to know why you feel stuck even when you try? Because your trying has been soft. Your trying has been conditional. You try when it's convenient. You try when you're not too tired. You try when there's time. You try when nothing goes wrong. That isn't trying. That's dabbling. That's playing with the idea of discipline while staying loyal to comfort. A disciplined man doesn't need ideal conditions. He creates conditions. He sets a time, and he shows up. He doesn't ask his mind for permission. He doesn't ask his emotions for approval. He doesn't wait to feel brave. He moves while afraid. He moves while uncertain. He moves while tired. And because he moves, he becomes the kind of man who can handle more. The load increases, and he adapts. That's the whole point. You don't become strong by waiting until life is light. You become strong by carrying weight until it reshapes you. Look at your environment. It's a mirror. The clutter, the chaos, the unfinished tasks, the half-kept promises, the neglected corners. That's you. It's not a style. It's a signal. You live in a space that allows you to be a man who drifts. Your phone is always near you because you're afraid of being alone with your thoughts. Your habits are built around escape because you don't like what you see when you're still. You tell yourself you need the distraction. You don't. You crave it because you trained yourself to crave it. You're not powerless. You're undisciplined. There's a difference. Powerlessness is when you have no control. You have control. You just don't like using it because control feels like responsibility. And responsibility feels like pressure. And pressure is what you've been running from your whole life. You want the brutal truth without the drama. Here it is. You've been living like you have infinite time. You've been acting like you can always restart later. Like your body will always respond. Like your mind will always stay sharp. Like opportunities will keep returning. They won't. Time doesn't hate you, but it will erase you without emotion. The days you waste don't come back to punish you in a dramatic way. They just disappear. And then one day you look up and your later is gone. Not because something tragic happened, but because nothing happened. That's the real danger, not disaster. Drift. Drift kills men quietly. Drift turns goals into memories. Drift turns ambition into bitterness. Drift turns your name into someone's disappointment. Not because you were evil, but because you were soft for too long. You don't need to turn into a machine. You need to turn into a man who respects his own word. A man who doesn't promise himself things he doesn't keep. A man who doesn't build his identity around being capable while avoiding the work that would make him truly capable. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. Consistency is harder than intensity. Intensity is a flare. Consistency is a grind. Intensity makes you feel alive for a week. Consistency changes your life over years. You've chased intensity because it's exciting. You've avoided consistency because it's boring. That boredom is exactly where your salvation lives. Boredom is where discipline grows, because boredom strips away emotion and leaves choice. If you can build a life that holds even in boredom, you can hold in chaos too. And don't confuse discipline with punishment. Discipline is care. cold care. The kind that doesn't ask how you feel before it protects you. The kind that doesn't negotiate when the stakes are your life. When you train your body, you're not punishing it. You're teaching it resilience. When you eat clean, you're not starving yourself. You're giving yourself fuel. When you wake early, you're not torturing yourself. You're buying time and silence before the world starts taking from you. When you cut distractions, you're not depriving yourself. You're reclaiming your mind. The man who thinks discipline is punishment will always rebel against it. He'll treat his own structure like an enemy. The man who understands discipline is protection will stop rebelling. He'll stop treating freedom like a permission slip to decay. He'll understand that the only real freedom is the ability to do what you must, even when you don't want to. You've been waiting for confidence. Confidence is a receipt. It comes after purchase. Pay first. Show up first. Keep your promises first. Confidence doesn't descend on you because you're special. It grows quietly when you stack evidence. One day you realize you're different because you've been behaving differently, not because you thought differently. That's when your posture changes. That's when your eyes change. That's when your voice changes. Not because you learned a trick, but because you became a man you can trust. And trust is everything. If you can't trust yourself, you can't build anything. You can't build a career. You can't build a body. You can't build a relationship that doesn't rot. You can't build peace. Everything collapses because you are the foundation. And your foundation is compromised by broken promises. So you're going to do something else now. You're going to stop making grand vows. Grand vows are cheap. You're going to make small commitments and keep them like your life depends on them. Because it does. You pick a time you will train, and you show up at that time whether you feel ready or not. You pick a set of tasks you will do daily, and you do them without negotiating. You pick a standard for your sleep, and you protect it like it's a weapon. You pick a standard for what you put in your body, and you follow it like a man who wants his future self to survive. You pick a standard for your focus, and you build an environment that supports it. Not perfectly, not forever, but consistently. And when you fail, because you will fail, you don't make it a story. You don't turn it into a dramatic collapse. You don't punish yourself with days of indulgence. You correct immediately. You return immediately. You shorten the distance between failure and discipline until failure can't steal weeks from you. That's how men win, not by never slipping, by refusing to let slipping become identity. You're also going to stop expecting your life to feel fair. Fairness is a child's religion. The world is not fair, and it will not become fair because you're frustrated. Your job is not to make life fair. Your job is to become capable enough that unfairness doesn't break you. You become the man who can operate with less sleep, less praise, less support, less certainty. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because life will demand it at some point, and you will either be ready or you will fold. If you're always waiting for conditions to be comfortable, you're building a life that can only exist in comfort. that life is fragile. Fragile men get crushed when the storm hits. The storm always hits. You either train now or you beg later. There is no third option. And here's what you should understand about being the strong one. Being strong doesn't mean you never get tired. It means you don't let tiredness decide your behavior. Being strong doesn't mean you never feel lost. It means you don't let confusion become paralysis. Being strong doesn't mean you never need anyone. It means you don't turn need into dependency. It means you can stand alone when you have to, because you will have to. You will have nights where nobody answers. You will have days where people misunderstand you. You will have seasons where you are not seen. If your discipline depends on being seen, you will fail. If your drive depends on being praised, you will rot. You need a deeper anchor. You need something that doesn't require witnesses. That anchor is pride in your own standards, not pride as ego. Pride is refusal to become someone you can't respect. You keep thinking the goal is to feel better. The goal is to be better. Feeling better comes and goes. Being better stays. A man who is better can handle feeling bad without collapsing. A man who is better can sit in discomfort without running. A man who is better can take hits and keep moving. A man who is better doesn't need to be rescued from every hard emotion, because he has a structure that carries him. Your goal is structure. Your goal is resilience. Your goal is competence. Your goal is a life that doesn't fall apart when your emotions shift. That is what people call strength, and it's built in silence. So keep going. Keep going even if you don't feel a surge. Keep going especially when you don't. The days you don't feel it are the days that matter. Anyone can perform when they're charged up. The man you want to become is defined by what he does when he's empty. If you can move through emptiness with discipline, nothing in this world can truly own you. Not stress, not fear, not the opinions of men who never built anything, not the comfort you keep crawling back to. You will be your own authority. And when you finally become that, you won't need motivation. You won't need reminders. You won't need someone to check on you. You'll check yourself calmly, mercilessly, every day. And you'll do the work because you understand the alternative isn't failure in some dramatic sense. The alternative is something worse. The alternative is disappearing in plain sight while you're still breathing. And you already know what that feels like, because you've tasted it in small doses and pretended it was normal. You've walked through days where your body moved, but your mind was somewhere else, numb and distant, doing the minimum to keep the image alive. You've laughed at things you didn't feel, nodded through conversations you didn't care about, told people you were fine because it was easier than explaining the emptiness you can't even name. That emptiness isn't mysterious. It's the space where your effort should be. It's the vacuum left behind when a man stops chasing his own standards and starts living off convenience. You keep trying to treat it like a mood, like a phase, like something that will lift if you rest enough or distract yourself enough. It won't. It will deepen. The more you feed it comfort, the more it demands comfort. The more you avoid hard things, the more hard things feel impossible. That's not spiritual. That's not fate. That's conditioning. Your nervous system learns what you teach it. If you teach it that discomfort means stop, then every challenge will feel like danger. If you teach it that discomfort means work, then pressure becomes familiar, and familiar pressure becomes strength. You can keep studying your feelings like they're the problem, or you can change what you do and let your feelings catch up. You've been giving your emotions too much authority because you don't want to admit your habits are the real leaders of your life. You keep thinking the world is watching you fail. It's not. The world barely sees you. That's another truth you avoid because it kills the fantasy that your struggle is somehow being recorded. Nobody is tracking your almost starts. Nobody is counting your attempts. Nobody is noting your intentions. The world notices outcomes, and even then it forgets fast. That should liberate you, but you use it as an excuse to disappear. You tell yourself there's no point because nobody cares. You're right, nobody cares. That's why it's pure. That's why it's yours. You don't build yourself for their attention. You build yourself because living as a man you don't respect is a slow death. You build yourself because weakness feels like a debt that compounds. You build yourself because the day will come when something hits you harder than your excuses. And if you haven't trained, you'll fold. Your life doesn't need an audience to matter. It needs you to stop treating it like a rehearsal. The men who become something don't do it because they were watched. They do it because they couldn't tolerate the quiet shame of knowing they were wasting themselves. You want to blame burnout, but burnout isn't always about doing too much. Sometimes it's about doing too little of the right things for too long. It's about spending your days in tasks that don't build you, conversations that don't sharpen you, routines that don't strengthen you, and then wondering why you feel empty. Of course you feel empty. You're not investing in anything that returns pride. You're spending your energy on surviving, not building. You're busy maintaining a life you don't even like, and you call it responsibility. There's a difference between being responsible and being trapped. Responsibility builds. Trapped decays. A responsible man chooses his load. A trapped man carries whatever lands on him and calls it noble. You keep calling it noble because it protects you from the harder truth. You've been avoiding the risk of choosing your own path and failing on it. Carrying other people's needs is safer than pursuing your own standard, because if you fail while serving others, you can still be praised for trying. If you fail while chasing your own growth, there's nowhere to hide. That's why you stay stuck. Not because you don't know what to do, but because you don't want to face the version of you that might try and still come up short. That fear is your leash. You don't need to become fearless. You need to become obedient to your standards. Fear doesn't vanish. It just changes its shape. The man who thinks he must eliminate fear before he acts will never act. The man who acts while afraid gets stronger until fear becomes background noise. You've been trying to negotiate with fear like it's a person you can convince. You can't convince it. Fear is automatic. It rises when you step toward uncertainty. It's supposed to rise. It's a signal, not a command. But you've made it a command, so it owns you. It tells you to wait, to delay, to plan more, to get ready, to seek certainty, to seek permission. You follow, and you call it being smart. It's not smart, it's safe. Smart is doing the work that reduces risk. Smart is training until your skill makes fear irrelevant. Smart is earning certainty through repetition. There is no other kind of certainty. If you want to stop being ruled by fear, you don't talk to it. You move through it until it learns you're not listening anymore. You also keep confusing suffering with progress. You suffer in your head, and you think that counts. It doesn't. You can suffer for years in the same place and call it a hard life. But if you never turn that suffering into disciplined action, you're just bleeding into the ground. The world doesn't reward internal pain. It doesn't reward mental battles nobody can measure. It rewards output. It rewards adaptation. It rewards results. Not because it's cruel, but because that's how reality works. A man who suffers and produces becomes valuable to himself and others. A man who suffers and stagnates becomes a liability to his own future. And the longer he stays there, the more he starts to hate the world for not noticing his struggle. That hatred turns into bitterness. Bitterness turns into excuses. Excuses turn into a personality. Then he wonders why people don't respect him. He's not even respecting himself. Respect is not a feeling you demand. It's an outcome of the way you live. You want to be understood, but you also don't want to change what makes you misunderstood. You hide your weakness, then complain you're alone. You hide your plans, then complain nobody supports you. You hide your effort, then complain nobody appreciates you. You're building a life where your inner world is invisible. Then you're shocked when it stays invisible. But even if people did see it, even if they did understand you perfectly, it wouldn't solve the problem. Understanding doesn't create discipline. Understanding doesn't build muscle. Understanding doesn't pay bills. Understanding doesn't fix your sleep. Understanding doesn't make you consistent. It just makes you feel less alone while you stay the same. You don't need less loneliness. You need more standards. Loneliness is survivable. Regret isn't. A man can endure loneliness if he respects himself. A man cannot endure the quiet disgust of knowing he failed himself for years, because that disgust follows him into every room. It poisons everything. It makes him hard to live with. It makes him suspicious of joy. It makes him resentful of anyone who is progressing. He starts calling their discipline luck, because admitting its work would force him to face his own laziness. That's the path you're on if you keep choosing comfort. It doesn't end with peace. It ends with a man who can't stand his own thoughts. You've been waiting for a reason big enough to change. You want a crisis. You want the kind of pain that forces you to evolve, so you don't have to choose evolution willingly. You want life to corner you. so you can finally become the man you should have been building all along. That's another form of cowardice. You're hoping for disaster because disaster removes responsibility. It turns discipline into survival. Survival is easier than choice because survival is non-negotiable. Choice is where your weakness shows. Choice is where you reveal what you value. Every day you wake up with choices, and you keep choosing small comfort. Then you tell yourself you're waiting for a bigger push. You are the push. If you can't generate urgency without catastrophe, you're not mature. You're reactive. Reactive men live at the mercy of life. They only change when they're punished. Strong men change because they see the consequences coming and refuse to walk into them. They don't need to be hit to learn. They learn from patterns. They learn from other men's collapses. They learn from the way time erases the undisciplined. I've watched men collapse quietly, not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked daily control. They had moments of brilliance and years of drift. They had big talk and small habits. They had dreams and no structure. They believed their potential was a guarantee, like it was money in the bank. Potential is nothing until you convert it. Potential expires. Not in a dramatic way. It just gets harder to access as your body ages, as your responsibilities grow, as your mind gets used to excuses, as your environment cements around your weaknesses. The older you get, the more expensive change becomes, because you're not just fighting laziness anymore. You're fighting identity. You're fighting patterns you repeated thousands of times. You're fighting the fact that your brain has built a well-worn path toward comfort, and every time you try to step off it, it feels like walking through thorns. That's why you can't wait. Not because of some romantic life is short speech, because your habits are getting heavier, because your weakness is getting smarter, because your excuses are getting more convincing. The longer you wait, the more you will need to break, and breaking is messy. You don't need to break, you need to tighten. Tighten your day, tighten your boundaries, tighten your standards, tighten your circle, tighten what you allow into your mind, tighten what you tolerate from yourself. You've been too forgiving with your own weakness, and you call it self-compassion. Real self-compassion is not letting yourself rot. Real self-compassion is not letting temporary feelings sabotage your future. Real self-compassion is doing what your future self would thank you for, even when your present self complains. You can be kind to yourself without being soft. Softness is not kindness. Softness is neglect, disguised as mercy. Kindness is making sure the man you become is strong enough to handle life without needing to numb himself every night. Your daily life is built on permission slips. You keep granting yourself exceptions. Exceptions for stress. Exceptions for a bad night of sleep. Exceptions for a hard week. Exceptions for a mood. Exceptions for, I deserve it. You don't realize how those exceptions stack up. One exception becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes an identity. Then you're not a man who had a hard week. You're a man who doesn't follow through. This is why discipline must be boring and strict. Because the moment you let it become emotional, it becomes negotiable. A strict rule doesn't care that you had a bad day. It cares that you show up. It cares that you do the minimum required. Even a bad workout, even a short session, even a single page read, even a small task finished. The point is not intensity. The point is keeping your word. Keeping your word to yourself is the root. Everything else is branches.